Hi everybody, Russ here again, having more Daisy lever gun fun. The last time we got together, I was talking about this little gun here. This is one of my Frankensteins. I like to call them Franken rifles because they're made of parts of other guns put together. Now, whenever I first got this gun, and you'll notice it's a wide frame Daisy. It's actually a Model 95. When I first got it, the stock was in bad shape. The cocking lever was in bad shape. The barrel actually had a big dent in it and it was bent. And there was no shot tube. So what I've done here with this particular gun is made it more usable and reconstructed the look a little bit. One of the things I did was take off the old stock, and this came from another old Model 95. I like to save parts of guns because you never know when they're going to come in handy. This little attachment here that holds the spotting scope, I don't even know what that's from. I picked it up at a flea market. In fact, it was the same flea market where I got this original 95 from. This section on the front of the gun, you see how it's exploded a little bit here? This is what you might find on any other gun that has the same diameter here and a larger diameter back here. But what we're used to seeing on these wide frame Daisies are longer barrels of consistent diameter all the way back. This is an old Model 96, which unfortunately had a very hard life, and it needed some work to get it back into action again. What I was able to do was take this much of a rifle that was a toy gun, cut the barrel off behind the big part that was bent, slide this over and attach it to what was left of this barrel. That's why this looks more like a carbine, because it's shorter than what we're used to seeing on these wide frame Daisies. It needed a forearm also, so I took a Red Ryder style forearm, cut it back, carved it a little, and was able to attach it to make a short piece in here. Obviously, with that bent barrel, there was no shot tube. So what I was able to do was take parts from other guns that I had salvaged. I shortened a shot tube. I took the muzzle cap from a Model 25 shot tube, and I was able to attach an abbreviated inner tube and put the little spoon on there again. This closes the loading gate on the rifle. You're not going to find one exactly like this because I had to make it up to fit. If you'll notice, I have a screw holding this side, closing up one of the holes. This side has a hole drilled all the way through it. That corresponds to the depth of where this closure is, so that whenever you're loading the gun, you drop your BBs in and you turn that until it's closed. BBs don't fall out, and you're ready to fire. The cocking lever was in pretty bad shape also. So I replaced that. This is a metal type cocking lever I was able to replace it with. And that's how this little USA 95 came to be. The reason I mention that is this piece on the front did not come from a Daisy air rifle. It came from a Daisy pop gun, one of the toy guns. I have been able to salvage quite a few parts from these toy guns. This is a 960 Trail Boss, and this one is the Ricochet model. And of course, we all know why it's called the Ricochet model. If you cock it and fire it, I don't know if you can hear this. There's a little wheel that turns in here and makes noise. me pull this off so you can see how it's made. Whenever this wheel spins, it has this little sounding cylinder on here, and that's what makes that noise, the ricochet noise. So every part of these guns are made in the same style as what we find on our 105s, 102s, the Red Riders, the 199s, as far as shape and inner diameters. Also, the cocking levers are compatible with what we have on our rifles. This gun, it was actually a 938 toy gun, and whenever I got it, it didn't look anything like this. I did some modification on the attachments and so forth because so many of the toy guns use rivets in places where we would find screws on our rifles. I also noticed that this had the little saddle ring on it with the lanyard, but it's on the opposite side of the gun is where we're used to seeing it. I thought that was unique. Whenever I got this gun, you couldn't even tell what it was. It had so much rust, dirt, and actually mud inside of the gun. The orange safety tip was pushed up inside of the barrel shroud, and this is the wood that came on the gun. The stock and forearm were actually made of wood. This looks more like a piece of driftwood than it does a stock. This is what's left of the original forearm. That's the way I got it. So I decided to try my best at tearing it apart, rebuilding, and I got it pretty good. This is actually one of the best loud pop guns that I own. Getting parts for these and using them on the rifles is not as difficult as you may think. If you're willing to drill out those rivets, if you're willing to do a little disassembly, you can salvage a lot of parts on these. The stocks, for instance, will fit on not just the pop guns, but also the rifles. You can also salvage the spring retainer from the inside. The cocking levers are exactly the same. There are some differences in the triggers. For instance, this is one of the triggers. It's a two-piece that came out of one of the pop guns. This is one of the more modern types that has the anti-bear trap, but it still has the rear spring resets. And some of these can be adapted to be used on a rifle, but sometimes not. One of the things I like about these is this is from one of the rifles. This is the plunger assembly. The front of it would have the cup on it with a set pin, and the spring would be held on behind it. This came out of a pop gun. Note the difference in length. The reason I say this is because if I needed one of these, I could always shorten this, re-drill it for the pin, and the diameters are exactly the same on the springs. In fact, if necessary, if I had a good spring from the pop gun, I could always shorten it and I could reuse it again. Well, that's the interesting things about saving parts from the guns, not just from the rifles, but you have very usable parts that you can get from the toy guns. We like to call them pop guns, noisemakers. They're not rifles, but Daisy made more than just rifles and air guns. They also made some pretty good toy guns. Well, that's everything for this one. So there it is, folks. Don't forget to subscribe. I like to hear comments from you folks, and you'll be able to tell whenever I post a new video. We'll see you next time.